Hey guys, so what do you do when your garden is exploding in hot peppers and you don't know what to do with them all and you cannot keep up with them? That's where we were at this past summer, and so we're going to share how we preserve those hot peppers and how we're using them now. Alright, so you know how it is, right? It's September, your garden's going crazy, you have everything that ripens all at once, and now you have to figure out a way to put it to use so it doesn't just end up in the compost bin, or you give it all away to friends, which is great. But sometimes it's really, really helpful to be able to preserve that food so that not only can you enjoy it in September, but so that you can actually eat it all year round. And so this was the dilemma we were facing this past September. I'm pretty strict with our hot pepper growing, and we can maybe do like one plant, maybe two, because that's really all we need for our family. We like to have maybe 1 to 2 peppers a week, but we don't go through them that much, but somehow we ended up with like, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 hot pepper plants, something like that, and they were all doing really, really well, producing like crazy, and so we were overflowing in hot peppers. But at the time in September, right, like you're canning everything, you're doing everything, so I didn't want to spend a ton of time like seeding peppers to chop and put them in the freezer or something like that. So I needed something quick and simple. And so what we did to preserve those peppers was we strung them so that they could dry. So we just strung them, you can see it here, on basic like string, nothing fancy. If you are gonna do this, I recommend maybe using something a little bit more heavy duty, sturdy than just regular string, although this worked well. But something like fishing line might be better to hold up the weight of those fresh peppers. Now that the peppers are dry, this is totally fine. But we just took our hot peppers and we strung them through the stem of the fruit here with the string. So not through the actual pepper itself, but through the stem. And we just put them all together and we strung them up, and it made a super cute, really kind of fun decoration in our living room here that we have had strung up since September, and we are in February now. And as you can see, I haven't done a thing with those peppers since then, but that is about to change. So we're gonna take these peppers down and we're gonna turn them into like a crushed hot pepper, what you might see in those jars when you go out to a pizza place, you know, on the table, those red pepper flakes. So it's super easy to take these dried hot peppers, turn them into those pepper flakes, or even into a hot pepper powder. So let's go ahead and do that now. Alright, so we took our dried hot peppers down and we removed the string. And one thing I forgot to add there, when we were stringing our hot peppers, we actually used a needle to stick through the stem. That's how we strung them up initially. But anyways, so we removed our hot peppers, we took the strings out, and then I cut the stems out. And now we are ready to go ahead and turn all these dried hot peppers into hot red pepper flakes. And so there are different ways you can go about doing this, but I'm gonna do 2 different methods today. I'm gonna do it in our blender here. So we have a Vitamix, and I use the dry blender. We have a wet blender for doing like smoothies and wet things, and then we have a dry blender for doing more like turning things into spices or flours. So I'm gonna be using the dry blender of our Vitamix. You could also use a food processor or a grinder. And then the other way that I'm gonna go ahead and do it is by hand. And so I'm gonna actually just use a gallon-sized Ziploc bag and a rolling pin. And I'm just gonna roll those hot peppers out to make flakes. And so how you do this depends on, it's up to you. So if you want a more coarsely ground hot pepper flake, like what you would see in the shakers at, you know, a pizza restaurant, by hand might be the way to go. Or even if you do like pulse it in a food processor, just don't make it into a fine powder. Or if you want to blend it into a more finer powder, you might want to consider using like a blender or a food processor or some sort of grinder to get that finer powder. But either way is up to you. Another thing to note, hot peppers are hot. And you might want to consider, I haven't noticed so much of an issue with gloves. However, I would definitely either wear gloves or wash your hands thoroughly after handling hot peppers, because you know, you touch your face or whatever and it burns. So gloves are good, washing your hands is good. A mask is also really helpful. I just pulled out one of those old masks that we had from a couple years ago, and that worked fine. But the stuff makes you cough. It is hot, so if you're grinding, especially when making it in a blender, it just really kind of, the particles went up in the air and it just really made me cough a lot, so a mask was also really helpful. But that's it. That's all you need to preserve those hot peppers, to turn them into a hot pepper powder or hot pepper flakes. There's a ton of other ways that you could preserve hot peppers. You could freeze them, you could ferment them, you could turn them into a hot sauce. I just love this method because it's really so easy. It took us like 10-15 minutes to string those peppers up. I needed no extra ingredients, and here we are, you know, 4 or 5 months later, turning them into a hot pepper powder that then we can go on and use for the next year, because this stuff preserves really well. If everything is dried out, it's gonna preserve for a good year just fine. So that's what we're doing with our hot peppers. We hope you found this helpful, and so thanks so much for stopping by the farmstead today. We'll see you next time.